creatively desperate to spin the fact that Donald Trump is now a convicted felon. At least one major MAGA Republican congressman is publicly offering a new conspiracy theory, claiming that President Biden prosecuting his own son Hunter and at least two prominent Democratic lawmakers is actually proof that Biden is weaponizing justice against Republicans. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video, okay? MAGA's inventiveness when it comes to conspiracy theories is legendary, right? They need not align with previous conspiracy theories. They need not be internally consistent. All they do is just come up with the right combination of words, throw it at the wall, and hope that it sticks. And because MAGA behaves like a cult, it's almost guaranteed to work with millions or perhaps tens of millions of people. It's pretty discouraging. And so in this clip I'm about to show you, it's so illustrative, so fascinating for a variety of reasons. Number one, you have Republican Senator Tom Cotton, whom we've talked about before, but not quite often. And recent reporting indicates that he's at the top of Trump's vice presidential list, which of course seems to rotate all the time. And as you'll see here, he's pretty cunning compared to other MAGA Republicans because there are facts which contradict MAGA conspiracy theories, particularly the idea that President Biden is weaponizing justice against Republicans. And he takes them on and tries to spin them to his own benefit. So look out for that. And also look out for the host, Peter Alexander, because he does a really good job of pushing back. And he poses to Tom Cotton what I think is the single most important question that journalists should ask MAGA Republicans who claim that justice is being weaponized against Republicans. So we're going to play this clip and unpack it all together.
Let me ask you about what we've heard from former President Trump. At the first official event of this re-election campaign, Donald Trump proclaimed, "I am your retribution." He talks about seeking revenge against his political enemies and says he will appoint a special prosecutor to, in his words, go after Joe Biden and his family. If it's so objectionable for the justice system to be, as you say, weaponized against Donald Trump, why is it acceptable for Donald Trump to campaign on weaponizing the DOJ against Joe Biden?
Well, first off, Peter, let me just go back to the points you made about prosecuting certain Democrats like Bob Menendez and Henry Cuellar. I've noticed that Joe Biden's Department of Justice tends to target the Democrats that are critical of Joe Biden. Bob Menendez criticizes him for his weak Iran policy.
So he's weaponizing it against people that don't like him.
Henry Cuellar criticizes the president's immigration policy. They're investigating the mayor of New York because he has criticized Joe Biden's
how about his own son,
policy.
Hunter Biden? The case begins tomorrow.
Hunter Biden is guilty of so many crimes he can barely even keep track of them, unlike Donald Trump, for whom they never even revealed the alleged crime that he supposedly tried to cover up.
So just to be clear, though, if he was weaponizing the Justice Department, wouldn't he want to keep any case away from his own son?
He was forced, his own Justice Department tried to rig a settlement. They were forced by a judge asking questions of the prosecutor and Hunter Biden's defense attorneys.
But wouldn't he get rid of it completely? Why would he weaponize it against his own son and just get rid of the case altogether, by your argument?
Well, because he's going to pardon his own son after the election. And that's what you should ask Joe Biden at the White House sometime is, do you commit to not pardon Hunter Biden after the election?
Let me go back, Senator, to my initial question, which is if it's so objectionable for the justice system, to, as you say, to be weaponized by Joe Biden against Donald Trump, why is it appropriate for Donald Trump to campaign on weaponizing it against Joe Biden?
Donald Trump has said that his so-called retribution will be success at the ballot box.
Well, he also said an eye for an eye, so he hasn't just said it's success.
In 2016, when so many people insisted that Hillary Clinton should face criminal charges for doing exactly what Donald Trump was wrongly accused of doing, which is mischaracterizing legal expenses as something else. Remember, she paid for the dirty Russian dossier. They characterized it as legal expenses. She paid a fine to the FEC. Donald Trump specifically said he would not prosecute Hillary Clinton because that's not what we do in America.
So you can see Tom Cotton is much more cunning and verbally agile than the average MAGA Republican. There's no question about it, right? And he said so many things there that were so ridiculous and dishonest that we need to go through them all. We're actually going to go in reverse order here. So first and foremost, because again, I've been talking about this so consistently in previous videos, the claim that MAGA Republicans are offering, like, sure, Donald Trump campaigned on prosecuting Hillary Clinton, but he never followed through with it, right? And they're trying to give Trump credit for that. Except the reality is Trump did try to prosecute Hillary Clinton after he became president. So I've been hyping up this article on MSNBC by Steve Bannon, in which he brings the receipts and reminds people of what reality is. So he says, to the extent that reality still has any meaning, let's review the receipts. In Trump's first year in the White House, after the 2016 election was over and Clinton largely withdrew from public view, The then president publicly pleaded with the Justice Department to go after Clinton. So he tried. A year later, in 2018, the then president told the White House counsel that he wanted to order the Justice Department to prosecute Clinton, but he was told he shouldn't do that. He tried. Ahead of the Election Day 2020, nearly 4 years after Clinton's defeat, Trump again publicly called for Clinton's incarceration and lobbied then Attorney General Bill Barr to prosecute Clinton for reasons unknown. Bill Barr declined. None of this was kept secret. It happened out in the open. We all saw it play out in public. Trump targeted Clinton after the 2016 election and tried to have her prosecuted. It's not a matter of opinion. It's simply what happened, whether Republicans assume we've forgotten or not. The fact that Donald Trump tried to prosecute Hillary Clinton and failed because his DOJ refused to comply, perhaps because they thought his request was corrupt, or perhaps because they did look into a predicate to prosecute Clinton and didn't think they could make the case, or perhaps a combination thereof, Donald Trump doesn't get credit for that. Again, I use the attempted murder metaphor. Do we give attempted murderers credit for failing in their murder attempts? No, of course not, because the transgression is there. The fact that you were too incompetent to pull it off isn't to your credit, but Republicans are trying to rewrite reality. So then let's get into the conspiracy theory. This is what I mean, where Tom Cotton is more cunning than most MAGA Republicans because he has to contend with the fact that there is no evidence that President Biden's Justice Department disproportionately targets Republicans compared to Democrats, even though that's what they claim, because the facts show otherwise. And CNN has a good analysis of this. Does the DOJ target more Republicans than Democrats? Here's the data. The longstanding allegation from Trump is that President Biden has weaponized the Justice Department and that there's a double standard for Republicans compared with Democrats. But there's plenty of evidence otherwise. Senator Bob Menendez, the up for re-election Democrat from New Jersey, is on trial for bribery for the second time in 7 years. Okay. In Texas, federal prosecutors have brought corruption charges against Representative Henry Cuellar, a Democrat, for allegedly taking $600,000 in bribes. Another Democrat, Representative Cori Bush of Missouri, is the subject of a federal probe into her campaign spending, according to a CNN report in January. Okay. Then, of course, you have the situation with Hunter Biden, President Biden's son. All right. And then we're just going to keep going here. So if you look, federal cases against recent members of Congress, there are federal cases against current or former federal lawmakers. The author was able to find 9 targeting Republicans and 8 targeting Democrats. Pretty equitable, okay? So there is just no evidence of a disproportionate focus against Republicans from President Biden's Justice Department. And Tom Cotton knows this. He knows the facts are against him. So what he says is, actually, President Biden targeting Democrats and prosecuting Hunter Biden, his own son, is actually proof that President Biden is corrupt and that his Justice Department is corrupt and it's targeting Republicans. And the way he tries to spin it here is he's like, the Democrats whom have been targeted by the Justice Department have at one point or another criticized the president or disagreed with the president. But so has Bernie Sanders, a lot. He's not under investigation. AOC has criticized President Biden a lot. She's not under investigation. Joe Manchin, the incumbent Democratic senator of West Virginia, has been a colossal pain in President Biden's ass, and he's not been targeted. Kyrsten Sinema has, again, criticized, like the others, and disagreed and rebelled from President Biden's agenda. She is not the subject of a federal probe. And we could go on and on and on, because it turns out the vast majority of Democrats have at one point or another publicly disagreed with President Biden. Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, Jamie Raskin, Jared Moskowitz. The list goes on and on. Elizabeth Warren. So that logic doesn't comply. It doesn't compute. Tom Cotton is trying to lie to his audience, because if President Biden was simply targeting people who disagreed with him, there'd be a hell of a lot more prosecutions of Republicans and Democrats. Why isn't he targeting more Republicans? Republicans disagree with him even more than Democrats. Interesting stuff. That's, of course, because, again, for all his cunning, the facts are still not on Tom Cotton's side. Tom Cotton also says, actually, Peter Alexander, again, great point. He's like, well, listen, why would he prosecute his son? And this is really important, too. President Biden, his first wife and his young daughter died back in the 70s, I believe. And then his eldest son, Beau Biden, died in 2015. So President Biden's life has been marred by tragedy. Hunter Biden is his only surviving son, and they're very close. And Hunter Biden has been very troubled. President Biden has allowed a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, David Weiss, to continue investigating his son, Hunter. I want to be clear. President Biden could have fired David Weiss day one. He chose not to. He allowed Weiss to investigate his son, even though Weiss was a Trump-appointed Republican U.S. attorney. Then President Biden allowed Weiss to become a special counsel, giving him more power and privileges and independence to prosecute his son, Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, right now, as of today, is recording, will be in trial for these prosecutions, and he faces real jail time if he's convicted. President Biden has the power to make all of this go away if he wanted to. He could have fired Weiss. He could have ordered Merrick Garland to fire Weiss or to not make him special counsel. He could fire Merrick Garland. He could make this go away. He could pardon Hunter Biden today. But Tom Cotton's like, well, you know, Tom Cotton is really screwed there because he was like, well, they tried to set up the sweetheart plea deal. Well, the president could have the Justice Department just drop the prosecution. See, this is the thing. The Justice Department at any time can stop a prosecution because they're the one bringing it. They can say, you know what, never mind, we're done with this, we're dropping the case. And there would be no recourse. You can't force the Justice Department to bring a prosecution. It's up to them. They're the ones who bring it. So there's 7,000 different ways that it's within Biden's power. It would be enormously corrupt. I want to be clear. It would be enormously corrupt for Biden to do this. But it's within his constitutional power to either pardon Hunter Biden today or yesterday or whenever he wanted. And he doesn't have to answer. The president's pardon power is plenary. He doesn't have to get Congress's permission to do it or the Supreme Court's permission to do it. It's purely discretionary. And he hasn't done it. And as a matter of fact, he is repeatedly publicly committed to not pardoning his son. Imagine you're a father. I'm not a father, but imagine that you're a father, you're the president of the United States, your only surviving son, who is very troubled, is in legal trouble, and you have the power to snap your fingers and make it go away, either with a pardon or by ordering the withdrawal of the prosecution. Either way. And you could have done it at any time, and you chose not to. That is an act of superhuman integrity, in my opinion, with respect to the Justice Department. But Tom Cotton doesn't want you to recognize that. He's like, well, he'll pardon him. Well, why isn't he pardoning him now? And hasn't he publicly pledged to not pardon him? Well, I mean, he may pardon him down the road. Maybe. He may lie. He may break his word. But he could have done it a while ago, and you all would have been, there's nothing you could have done about it, Tom Cotton. He could have ordered the prosecution. I mean, it's just the lies and dishonesty coming from this cult are just outrageous. Again, I'll also point out that Tom Cotton is lying when he's like, well, Donald Trump has only ever said that real retribution is success. Again, we brought this up, this article by Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Donald Trump in this election cycle alone has repeatedly, explicitly talked about prosecuting his political enemies. Not, success is the best retribution. He has publicly campaigned on prosecutions, investigations, special counsels, things like that, as Peter Alexander pointed out. So again, Tom Cotton is lying to your face when he suggests that Trump said none of that. And what he really means is he's going to get revenge on his critics by just doing well as president. That is a lie. It's an explicit lie. So the last thing I want to point out is Peter Alexander asked that really good question that I want every journalist to ask any Republican who supports Trump to contend with. If you think and you claim that the Justice Department has been weaponized against Trump and Republicans, let's just grant you the premise. Why is it permissible? Why was it permissible? Why is it permissible now for Donald Trump in every election cycle, 2016, 2024, this election cycle, and 2020 as the sitting president, to publicly campaign on weaponizing justice against the opposition? Why didn't you condemn those words then? Why didn't you condemn the rhetoric then? Why is it okay for you? Why do you celebrate? Why do you reward the notion of a weaponized justice system prosecuting and persecuting Democrats? But now you complain that the Justice Department has been weaponized against Trump. It's clearly a double standard, an indefensible, irrational, hypocritical double standard that Republicans must be forced to contend with. So good on Peter Alexander for doing it. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments.